Something was off that night. The house was unnaturally quiet, the kind of silence that doesn't soothe, but suffocates. I was in the kitchen, finishing up the dishes after dinner, when I felt it. Eyes on me. I turned, and there he was, my son, standing in the doorway, barely illuminated by the dim glow from the hallway. His gaze locked onto mine with a strange, unsettling intensity I'd never seen before. He walked toward me slowly, deliberately, and sat beside me without a word. His closeness felt too sharp, too sudden. Then, in a voice so faint it barely existed, he whispered 3 words that broke the stillness and opened a door I hadn't known was there, one I wasn't ready to open. The evening had seemed ordinary at first. Jason came home from school like usual, his backpack hanging off one shoulder, shoes kicked off in the middle of the floor. He'd been withdrawn lately, quieter than normal, lost in his thoughts. But I figured it was just a phase. Boys grow up, they change. That's what I kept telling myself. Still, something about that night felt off. I stood at the sink, hands in warm, soapy water, letting the repetitive motion of washing dishes pull me into a trance. The hum of the refrigerator was steady, the clink of plates in the sink a soft rhythm beneath it all. Jason hadn't said much during dinner and disappeared into his room almost as soon as he finished eating. I told myself I'd check on him, but the week had drained me, and I let the moment slip by. Then came the silence. It wasn't the comforting kind that settles in after a long day. This silence was thick, weighted, like the air itself was holding its breath. It crawled up my spine and settled in my chest, and I knew, somehow, that something was wrong. I dried my hands and stepped into the living room, expecting to find Jason with his eyes glued to a screen or curled up with a book. But the room was dark, except for him. He was standing perfectly still, his eyes locked onto mine. Time stalled. My heart thudded a little faster, an invisible pressure creeping into my lungs. Jason had always been my quiet child, but this was different. There was something in the way he looked at me, something silent but powerful, like a question I didn't know how to answer. And in that moment, I felt like I was standing on a ledge, caught between stepping back or falling in. "Jason?" My voice came out strange, like it didn't belong to me. He didn't answer at first. Instead, he took one slow, silent step forward, his bare feet gliding across the wooden floor without a sound. The usual spark in him, his steady confidence, was gone. The boy in front of me now felt like a stranger wearing my son's skin. Something in him had changed. He sat down beside me on the couch, and instantly the air felt heavier, like the space around us had collapsed inward. We were close, closer than we'd been in a long time, but there was no comfort in it, no warmth. It didn't feel like family. It felt off, wrong somehow. I turned toward him, my heart beating faster, tight with a blend of dread and desperate curiosity. "What's going on, Jason?" I asked, trying to keep my tone steady, but my voice betrayed me. It cracked, thin and uncertain. He didn't reply right away. The silence grew between us, stretching like a wire pulled too tight. I felt his eyes on me, measuring, weighing, like he was deciding whether or not to cross a line that couldn't be uncrossed. And then, finally, he spoke. His voice was a whisper, barely more than breath, but it cut straight through me. "Mom," he said softly. I saw how hard it was for him, how those words dragged at him like chains, like he was carrying something too heavy for someone his age, something that had been buried deep and festering for far too long. "What is it, baby?" I whispered back, not sure I wanted the answer, but needing it all the same. He looked down, avoiding my gaze. His fingers picked nervously at the hem of his shirt, twisting the fabric over and over, like it was the only thing anchoring him. The silence stretched on, and in it I felt something cold slip into the room with us, something that hadn't been there before. Then he looked up. His eyes met mine, and in that moment I knew, whatever he was about to say, I wouldn't be able to unhear it. "Mom, I need to tell you something." His voice cracked just slightly, and I saw it, plain as day, in his face. This wasn't normal teenage fear. This wasn't awkwardness or shame. This was something darker. There was fear in his eyes, real fear, not of being in trouble, not of disappointing me. He was afraid of me. He was afraid of the truth. And in that instant, it all hit me at once, like a punch to the chest. I wasn't ready for this. My breath hitched, and for a moment it felt like I was standing at the edge of something vast and unknowable, gazing into a darkness I couldn't name. My son, the boy I had rocked to sleep, bandaged, scraped knees for, watched grow year after year, suddenly felt like someone else entirely. Whatever he was about to say, it would change us. It would alter the shape of everything we were. It would break something sacred. And then, in the stillness that wrapped around us like a shroud, he whispered the words, "Mom, I'm sorry." The world tilted. My mind scrambled to find footing, but there was none. Sorry? For what? For the distance that had crept in between us? For the silence? For something more? The lack of answers only made the moment feel heavier, more suffocating. I wanted to reach for him, to ask, no, beg, for clarity. But something in his eyes stopped me. The weight behind his apology was unmistakable. This wasn't about a missed curfew or a broken rule. This was deeper. This was a fracture. The silence that followed was unbearable, pressing down like a physical force. It wasn't just what he said, it was what he didn't say. The unspoken truth hovered just out of reach, and I felt it, like a storm gathering on the horizon. "What do you mean, Jason?" My voice was small, shaking. I hated the sound of it, but the fear inside me had grown too loud to hide. He didn't look at me right away. His voice cracked slightly when he spoke again, the words tumbling out in a breathless rush, as if they had been clawing their way out for days. "I didn't mean to, but it happened, and I can't undo it." His eyes drifted away, searching the corners of the room for anything but my face. The air turned thick, too heavy to breathe. The walls seemed closer than they had a moment ago, the space between us drawn tight like a thread on the verge of snapping. And just like that, the silence returned, deeper than before. Crushing. I could feel it now. This wasn't the end of a conversation. This was the beginning of a reckoning. Whatever Jason was holding inside, whatever truth he was about to lay bare, I wasn't ready. I wasn't ready to hear it. I wasn't ready for it to redefine everything I believed about him, about us. But I also knew, with terrifying certainty, that nothing would ever be the same again. I could feel my heart pounding against my ribs, its rhythm loud in the silence as I sat frozen on the couch, staring at my son. Those 3 words, "I'm sorry," still hung in the air, heavy with the promise of something I wasn't yet ready to face. I had always believed I knew my children, truly knew them, inside and out. I prided myself on being tuned in, attentive, present. But in that moment, I realized just how wrong I'd been. I didn't know Jason, not the way I thought I did. "Jason!" I whispered his name, my voice barely audible, the syllables fragile in my mouth, like a question wrapped in fear. He didn't meet my eyes. His stare remained fixed on the floor, fingers coiling and uncoiling in his lap. I could see the storm in him, an inner war between wanting to tell me everything and wanting to disappear. "I don't know how to explain it," he said quietly, his voice shaking. "I didn't mean for it to happen, but it did, and I can't just act like it didn't." My thoughts spiraled. 1,000 possibilities rushed through me, each one darker than the last. What had he done? What was he trying to confess? I wanted to reach for him, to touch his hand, to tell him we'd get through it. But I couldn't move. I was paralyzed by the unknown. "Jason, please, just talk to me." The words came out raw, trembling with desperation. I needed something, anything, to pull me out of this limbo. The silence between us was suffocating, stretching long and wide like a canyon I didn't know how to cross. He took a shaky breath, his fingers now trembling visibly. "It was after the camping trip last month," he said, his voice almost too soft to hear. I didn't tell you everything that happened. I didn't want to hurt you, but I can't keep it in anymore. The camping trip. I felt my stomach knot instinctively. He had gone with his friends and their families, including Emily, his best friend's older sister. She was polite, well-mannered, practically family. I hadn't thought twice about it. Why would I? Now every assumption I'd made began to unravel. I don't really know how to say this, Jason continued, but Emily, she kissed me. He hesitated before going on, his voice cracking. It wasn't just some random moment. It wasn't quick. It felt real, and I didn't stop it. A cold wave rushed through me. Emily, the girl I'd known for years, the girl I had trusted. This revelation didn't make sense. It didn't fit into the version of reality I had always clung to. Jason looked up at me then, and the guilt in his eyes nearly broke me. But it was just a mistake, right? I asked, my voice thin with forced calm. You were just experimenting? I needed it to be that simple. I needed this to be something we could move past. He shook his head slowly. No, Mom, it wasn't like that. It felt different, and it scared me because I didn't want it to. I didn't want to keep thinking about her. But I did. His voice faltered. The room seemed to grow quieter, colder. I've been thinking about it ever since, he said. I didn't want to tell you. I was afraid of what you'd think, but I couldn't carry it alone anymore. And there it was, the truth, trembling on the edge of his voice. I stared at him, struggling to reconcile the boy beside me with the one I thought I had known. I had raised him, taught him, loved him. But now it felt like I was meeting someone new, someone I didn't quite recognize. The mirror I had been looking into all these years had cracked. The weight of his words settled over me like a lead blanket, heavy, suffocating, inescapable. There was something so painfully raw in the way Jason confessed, something in his voice that carried both fear and shame, each syllable trembling under the burden of truth. And as much as I wanted to be angry, to yell, to demand more, to ask why, I couldn't, because he was still my son. And this moment? This was where I had to decide who I was going to be for him, what kind of mother I truly was. Jason! My voice cracked as I spoke, my throat tight. I don't even know what to say. This is a lot. I know, he said, barely above a whisper, his eyes glistening with tears. I didn't want to hurt you. I didn't want to hurt anyone. But I couldn't stop thinking about her, and I didn't know why. I didn't know what it meant, and I got scared. His vulnerability cut through me like glass, sharp, sudden, and impossible to ignore. This wasn't just about a kiss. It was about identity, confusion, the aching turbulence of adolescence. He was searching for himself in all the wrong places, and he didn't even realize it. I took a breath, not just to calm myself, but to find a center, a place to stand in the storm of emotions crashing through me. Jason, I said slowly, this doesn't define who you are. People make mistakes. You're young, you're figuring things out. That's not the issue. But you have to understand something. Boundaries matter. Respect matters. Your feelings are important, but so are other people's. He nodded, tears spilling freely now. I know, Mom. I didn't mean for any of this to happen. I didn't know what to do with how I felt. I reached for him, pulling him into my arms, wrapping myself around him like I used to when he was small and scared of the dark. He was still mine. Still that same boy, just older, more complicated, a little more lost. And in that embrace, I understood something else. This moment would define us, not because of what he'd done, but because of how we would face it. You're going to make mistakes, Jason, I whispered, holding him tightly. But that doesn't mean I'll give up on you. We'll figure it out together, I promise. You don't have to go through this alone. He nodded into my shoulder, trembling. I'm so sorry, Mom. I don't know how to fix it. You don't have to fix it right now, I said gently, pressing a kiss to his head. Not all at once. We'll take it one step at a time. Just promise me you'll be honest with me, even when it's hard, especially when it's hard." "I promise," he said, his voice thick and trembling with emotion. I didn't know if he fully understood the weight of that promise, but he meant it, and for now, that was enough. The room felt impossibly still, the air thick with everything left unsaid. Jason sat beside me, but it felt like an ocean still separated us, an ocean made of guilt, confusion, and the fragile pieces of truth. I kissed her. The words echoed again, over and over. A part of me still wanted to shout, to scream how this had happened, why it had happened, to protect my son from choices that could scar him, from people I thought I could trust. From Emily. I looked at him, truly looked at him, and I saw someone I didn't entirely recognize, not the little boy who used to fall asleep in my arms, but a teenager standing on the edge of something much bigger than either of us, a boy who had just taken his first step into a world full of consequences. And now, we had to walk through it together. That last line, realizing something about himself, hung in the air like a suspended breath, impossible to ignore. It wasn't just about a kiss anymore, it was about identity, about change, about the uncomfortable, disorienting journey of growing up. I stared at Jason, trying to absorb what he'd said, but part of me resisted. This wasn't the version of him I had raised in my head, the one I had quietly clung to, the predictable, safe, uncomplicated child. That Jason was easy to love, easy to understand. But this version, sitting in front of me, shaken, scared, but honest, he was someone real, and real was messy. I lowered my hand, finally resting it on top of his. His skin was cold, his fingers stiff, like he'd braced for me to pull away. But I didn't. I couldn't. "I want to understand," I said softly. "I really do, Jason, but you need to help me, because right now I'm trying not to let my fear turn into judgment." He blinked quickly, as if my words had startled him. "I'm trying to understand it too," he said. "I didn't think I'd feel anything. It was just Emily, you know, someone I've known forever. But when it happened, something clicked, and I don't know if it was about her or about me. There it was, the root of it all, the uncertainty, the self-questioning, the slow unraveling of a sense of self that once felt solid but had suddenly started to shift beneath him. This wasn't just a secret, it was an awakening. I felt a tremor of fear ripple through me, but also something else, a quiet, cautious hope, because he hadn't lied forever. He had told me, not perfectly, not gracefully, but he had come to me. That had to mean something. I squeezed his hand gently. "You don't have to have all the answers right now, but whatever this is, whatever you're feeling, we'll figure it out. Together." He looked up at me then, really looked, and I saw relief wash over his features, like sunlight breaking through clouds. "You're not mad?" I paused, choosing my words carefully. "I'm not mad," I said. "I'm scared. I'm confused. But I'm not angry, because I'd rather know the truth than pretend I know you when I don't. And if this is part of you, then we'll face it, one piece at a time." Jason nodded, a tear slipping down his cheek. And for the first time since the conversation began, I felt something that had been missing all night. Connection, real, fragile, honest connection. Even if everything had changed, maybe, just maybe, we hadn't lost each other. Would you like to continue the scene from Jason's perspective next, or stay in the mother's point of view? Jason sat there, the silence between us now heavy, but not as suffocating as before. His hands trembled slightly, his shoulders tense. He wasn't the same person I had raised, but he wasn't lost either. The boy I had known was still there, hidden beneath the layers of confusion and fear. "Thanks, Mom," he whispered, his voice small and shaky. "I don't know what I'd do without you." Those words broke something inside me. The bond we had, the unspoken trust, the safety of knowing what came next, was no longer certain, but there was still something between us. A thread, fragile but strong, that had survived even the most difficult conversations. I reached out and touched his shoulder, a simple gesture that spoke volumes. "I'm always going to be here for you, Jason," I said softly. "You don't have to carry this alone." We sat in silence for a moment, the weight of everything that had been said settling in. I still didn't know how to make sense of it all, but I realized that maybe that was okay. This wasn't about having all the answers, it was about being present, listening, letting him know that he wasn't alone in whatever he was going through. "Do you want to talk about it more?" I asked, my voice gentle. "Or do you need some time to think?" Jason hesitated, his eyes searching the room, then meeting mine again. "I don't really know what to say anymore," he admitted. I think I need to figure things out. I don't even know what I feel, or why I feel it." "I understand," I said quietly. "Take your time. But remember, if you need to talk, I'm here. We don't have to have all the answers today." He nodded, but there was still a sadness in his eyes that told me the journey ahead wasn't going to be easy. Not for him. Not for me. As I looked at him, I realized something that I hadn't fully acknowledged until now. This was the beginning of a new chapter for both of us. Jason was becoming someone I didn't fully understand yet, and maybe that was the point. I wasn't supposed to have all the answers, to understand everything about who he was becoming, but I could be there. I could stand beside him, even if I was unsure of where we were headed. "I love you, Jason," I said softly, the words feeling both familiar and new. "No matter what happens, that will never change." He looked at me then, his expression softening. "I love you too, Mom." The words hung in the air between us, a reminder that despite the uncertainty, some things, like love, remained constant. And maybe, just maybe, that was enough to keep us grounded as we both navigated the unknown. As the days turned into weeks, the quiet moments between us became more frequent. Jason spent more time alone in his room, reading or sketching, sometimes just staring out the window, lost in thought. I could sense the internal battle he was fighting, the confusion, the guilt, the uncertainty of what had happened and what it meant. But I also saw something else in him, something I hadn't noticed before, a quiet strength. He was beginning to grapple with the complexity of his emotions, and even though it wasn't easy for him, I could see that he was trying to make sense of it all. One evening, I found him in the living room, sitting with a notebook open on his lap. I stood there for a moment, watching him as he scribbled something down, his brow furrowed in concentration. It was as if he was trying to work through the thoughts that had been weighing on him. "Jason?" I called softly, stepping into the room. He looked up, startled, then gave me a small, almost apologetic smile. "Hey, Mom." I took a seat beside him on the couch, but didn't push him to talk. We had learned through all of this that sometimes silence was more healing than words. After a long pause, Jason sighed and closed the notebook, setting it aside. "I've been thinking a lot about everything," he began quietly, his voice unsure. "I just don't know how to deal with it, with the way things changed, with how I feel about Emily, with everything." I nodded, understanding more than he knew. "You don't have to have all the answers right now, Jason. It's okay to feel lost." "I don't know if I want to talk to her anymore," he admitted, his voice tinged with uncertainty. "I don't know if it's because I messed things up or if I'm just scared, but I can't stop thinking about what happened." I placed my hand on his, a gentle reminder that I was there, that he wasn't alone in his confusion. "You don't have to figure it out all at once. You're still growing, still figuring out who you are, and sometimes that means things won't make sense for a while." Jason met my gaze, his eyes searching mine, seeking reassurance. "Do you think I'm a bad person?" The question hung in the air between us, more painful than anything else he could have said. I shook my head. "No, Jason, you're not a bad person. You're just human. And part of being human is making mistakes and learning from them, but that doesn't define who you are." He looked at me, his eyes searching for something, Perhaps the approval he didn't know how to ask for, the comfort he wasn't sure he deserved. "I just don't want to hurt anyone again," he said softly. "You won't," I reassured him, squeezing his hand. "But sometimes it's okay to hurt. It's okay to feel lost or confused. You just have to take it one step at a time and learn from it." We sat there in silence, the weight of the conversation still lingering between us, but somehow lighter than before. I could see the small shift in him, his shoulders less tense, his expression softer, as if some part of him was beginning to understand that healing didn't happen overnight. "We'll figure it out, Jason," I whispered, my voice steady now. "It might take time, but we'll figure it out together." He nodded slowly, and though I could tell the journey wasn't over, I felt a sense of peace settle over us, just for that moment. And in that peace, I realized that this, whatever it was we were going through, was a part of our story now. It wasn't easy, it wasn't simple, but it was real. And as painful as it had been, it was also an opportunity to grow, together. The road ahead might still be rocky, but it would be one we walked side by side. And for now, that was enough.